Today is April 22nd, read Proverbs 22. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. Loving favor rather than silver and gold. The rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. Thorns and snares are in the way of the perverse. He who guards his soul will be far from them. Train up a child in the way he should go, and then when he is old, he will not depart from it. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. He who sows iniquity will reap sorrow, and the rod of his anger shall fail. He who has a generous eye will be blessed, for he gives of his bread to the poor. Cast out the scoffer, and contention will leave. Yes, strife and reproach will cease. He who loves purity of heart and has grace on his lips, the king will be his friend. The eyes of the Lord preserve knowledge, but he overthrows the words of the faithless. The lazy man says, there is a lion outside, I shall be slain in the streets. The mouth of an immoral woman is a deep pit. He who is abhorred by the Lord will fall there. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of correction will drive it far from him. He who oppresses the poor to increase his riches, and he who gives to the rich will surely come to poverty. Incline your ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply your heart to my knowledge, for it is a pleasant thing if you keep them within you. Let all be fixed upon your lips. Let them all be fixed upon you, so that your trust may be in the Lord. I have instructed you today, even you. Have I not written to you excellent things of counsels and knowledge, that I may make you know the certainty of the words of truth, that you may answer words of truth to those who send to you? Do not rob the poor because he is poor, nor oppress the afflicted at the gate. For the Lord will plead their cause, and plunder the soul of those who plunder them. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go, lest you learn his ways and set a snare for your soul. Do not be one of those who shakes hands in a pledge, one of those who is surety for debts. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should he take away your bed from under you? Do not remove the ancient landmark which your fathers have set. Do you see a man who excels in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before unknown men. That concludes today's Proverbs. Here's Ken.
And we're ready for our first speaker, Kathy.
Thank you, Ken. Hello, everyone. Do I need to put that up to my...
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? My name is Kathy Gruen, and I am going to talk today about lawful money for the most part, also as opposed to Federal Reserve notes. You can't hear me? Okay, sorry. I'm Kathy Gruen, and I'm going to be speaking today about lawful money. What is lawful money as opposed to Federal Reserve notes? What is a promissory note? And is the IRS constitutional? A little bit about myself. I have spent the majority of my career after graduating from Georgia Tech magna cum laude in December of 1990. I started with Arthur Anderson and Company, January of 1991.
Record, we want to capture this.
Oh, is it not recording?
Recording in progress.
Okay.
Should be. Yep, it is.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, I'll kind of start over. My name's Kathy Gruen. I'm going to be speaking today about lawful money and Federal Reserve notes. What is a promissory note? And is the IRS constitutional? A little bit about myself. And the reason that this subject interests me is I have spent most of my career in public accounting doing taxes. I'm a CPA. Graduated from Georgia Tech magna cum laude and then went straight to work for Arthur Andersen in January of 1991 and was with them until 1996 when I decided to stay home with my two children. Just a word about Arthur Andersen. I was pursued by 4 out of the big 6 public accounting firms in 1990. And I very carefully chose Arthur Andersen as the firm that I wanted to be affiliated with. I don't know this and I don't have any facts to back this up, but I will tell you that probably the story of what happened with Enron is fabricated. The mainstream media lies. I remember them talking about documents being shredded. Well, that wasn't uncommon. I started the first 6 months with Arthur Andersen in the audit department, not ever intending to be an auditor, but just to learn about the audit work papers. And at the end of every audit, and back then we didn't have computers to do the audits. We did everything on paper, 14-column paper, cut and paste, tick and tie, pen and pencil. And whatever work papers were left over, once the audit work papers were complete, everything was shredded. And the reason for that was so that it couldn't be taken out of context. And it was just for the safety of the company and the integrity of the audit work papers. So when they said, oh, they shredded documents, it wasn't to hide anything. Now, that's just my opinion, and that's after working for that company for 6 years. So for the past 30 years, I've done tax returns, and like all CPAs, I was indoctrinated. And if you're a CPA and you think you're not indoctrinated, well, I was until 2020, and I saw the lies behind COVID. And then went from there going down the rabbit hole, learning all kinds of lies about our health, like that we should wear sunglasses and we should use sunscreen. Those are both lies. The sun is good for us. If you wear sunglasses, it tricks your skin into thinking that it's dark out. And so your skin doesn't put through the protective agents that they would. So there's just so many things, like high cholesterol is bad. We need cholesterol for our brains. So low cholesterol drugs should be stopped. It's just a lie. So, but by 2021, I had finally come upon information about the IRS that showed me that the entire system was a fraud. The IRS is a private corporation and the Federal Reserve is the same. The Federal Reserve created the IRS. And I basically had to come to the conclusion that the last 30 years of my career were based on a fraudulent system. So once I learned that, I just could not do tax returns anymore. I left the career that I had had in 2023. And I have since met a group that helps people with saving on their tax or not paying tax at all using lawful money. So that's kind of what brought me to finding out what lawful money is and the difference between lawful money and Federal Reserve notes. I have a small video that I want to show. It's about 10 minutes. This guy does a really good job of explaining lawful money and showing it to you. So I am going to share my screen. Okay, how do I do that? Let's see. Here it is. Am I sharing? Oh,
This went off or something.
I'll wait just a minute. And I'll talk to you a little bit more. I'm going to show you a website later on, once we get this up and running. I work with a group called Wealth Guaranteed, and I met Dr. David Matthews by chance, and I don't think it was by chance. I think it was a God thing, because I have made the career that I have now is basically preparing tax returns using lawful money. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I think we're up. All right, here's the video. Hope you can hear it. Do I need to put the microphone?
More
Oh,
enhanced knowledge about money.
let's start over.
Well, again, Craig here from forbiddenknowledge.info with some more advanced knowledge about money. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about the United States. Okay, we're not talking about any other country. And we're going to be talking a lot about old money, notes, and all the way back to the creation of money in this country and the dollar. First of all, let's start maybe we're all going to find out what a dollar is. Because a lot of you believe what you have in your home and your dollars right now, what they are. A dollar is defined in the Coinage Act of 1792 as being a certain weight or measure and purity of gold or silver coin. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution will tell you what money is, and you go research that. So, what is a dollar? A dollar is a certain weight, measure, hold, silver. So all these paper things you have in your home called dollars are not dollars at all. They are debt instruments. They're based upon your belief that they're money. Now, they are money right now, but as soon as you no longer believe it, it is no longer money. Because this is all in your mind. What's the difference between this 1 and this 100? They're about the same size, probably got about the same ink in them. This one's got a couple of fancy holograms and such on it, but they're still just pieces of paper. It's all in your mind. You believe they're money, so they still are, as long as you believe. As soon as anybody doesn't believe anymore, then they're worthless. Well, they're toilet paper. So, how did it become that way? Well, back in 1913, the Coinage Act of 1792 established what a dollar was. You don't believe me? Go back and look at it. That tells you what a dollar is. These other things are dollars. In 1913, the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank allocated, Congress allocated the creation and regulation of the value of money thereof to a private corporation called the Federal Reserve Bank. They make it look like it's federal. It's a quasi-federal. It's really not. There's no reserves either. It's just it's paper debt instruments. Anything you buy today, you're buying with pieces of paper, and you're just trading debts. You can actually pay for it. You use legal tender instead of lawful money. What I mean by that? Lawful money, you're looking for older money. And I don't know if I have some silver certificates here, for instance. They have the blue seal, whereas our modern dollars have the green seal. Well, one seal represents a silver certificate. You could actually go to a Federal Reserve Bank and get $5 for it. In fact, it says, all right, on the bill, it says, we'll pay to the bearer on demand $5. Wait, we'll pay to the bearer on demand. It says, in silver, pay to the bearer on demand. In other words, you can take this to a bank and actually get $5 in silver. What's $5 in silver? $5 in silver would be five silver coins. That one happens to be a Morgan silver, or maybe a piece, but it's real silver. This was lawful money. It had intrinsic value. It's real, you can touch it. This has no real value, but it's silver. You can go get your silver. They promised you on there, we'll pay to the bearer on demand $5. And some of them say that, actually. For instance, United States notes. United States notes have this red seal. See that? Versus green seal. The United States notes would tell you you could take them into the bank and then you could get for this. What is $2? $2, according to 1792, is gold and silver coin. So you can actually trade this in to get real money for it. And they made that promise right on the note. They told you, we can pay you $2 on this paper. Now you make payments anymore. It's all in your head, people. So, that's the difference. You go back and look at old money, you'll see all kinds of different configurations, all kinds of different prints on it. I'll tell you, they will say lawful money on it. Actually, a lot of them will say lawful money, not say legal tender. Legal tender is not even now. What is it? Again, it's valuable to you because you believe it has value. If you don't believe it anymore, it has no value. So that's the key to all of this. So I wouldn't recommend if you're worried about some kind of financial traps, and you really shouldn't be dealing with these things at all. Just keep as much money every day, money now, as you need to get money for your day-to-day, on. But if you have a lot of it in there, just be prepared to lose it because all these paper money are Ponzi scheme. Eventually they will collapse. This is mathematical certainty. It just so happens the Federal Reserve Bank has been around the longest in the world history so far. Well, this is nothing new. It collapsed all the time. Just look at Cyprus, look at all the other countries at the time, and they all fall eventually. So, as far as the sovereign goes now, because I'm one, the only way I can actually buy something is with money. Money will be either stated on the notes when you're backed by gold and silver, or else it is actually with gold and silver, right? Real gold and silver. So if I pay for something, say I want to buy a car, that's an advanced tip for you sovereigns out there. Let's say I want to buy a car, because as a sovereign, you don't have a social security number, because you can't. If you don't have a social security number, you can't get a driver's license, and you can't conduct business in commerce the way everybody else does. So you have to be able to purchase something that you actually own. Because if I buy a car with Federal Reserve notes, I'm just trading this, and I didn't know I don't own anything. I got a certificate of title showing that the government really owns it, that I don't own it. Because I use their private money. I use their private money flat. So how do you buy a car? With lawful money? Well, you can actually get lawful money. Go to a coin store. You can actually buy lawful money. You can buy some things like silver certificates or United States notes or something that's actually designated as lawful money, which is U.S. government. You see, this is the United States note. These are United States notes. These are United States notes. It's right on the top. United States note. It doesn't say Federal Reserve note. It says United States note. This is made by our federal government. This one says Federal Reserve note.
We have some people waiting.
That's made by the private. So when you trade their private debt instruments, you're just trading debt, and you can't own it.
And it's still
Hypothecated the Federal Reserve Bank.
the overall good to them. And
By buying with lawful
some
money,
people wait.
money that actually basically has lawful money on it, and they buy our companies rather than some kind of company, then you can actually own it. And how do you prove it? You pay for it.
Can we do?
Well,
Okay.
you can actually go buy a car. Let's say it costs $1,000. Okay, they want $1,000 here. And by dollars, we're talking about the modern Ponzi scheme dollars. Okay, the people believe are dollars. Because that person, I'll call him a person, that person who wants to sell that car, he wants Federal Reserve notes. Okay, so you give him your Federal Reserve notes, but you also do this. You get, they say, and I can show you here, this is a stack of United States notes, the 2s and 5s, and you can get other denominations as well. You can pay him also $50 in lawful money. And you go to a, what do you call those people? The people who witness it, the certified. Like, I'm losing, I lost track of what it is, I'm talking about a notary public. You go to a notary, and then for you sovereigns, you can't get a notary public because for notary public, they require a driver's license or state issued ID, which you can't own as a sovereign because without that social security number, you can't get a driver's license or a state issued ID. So you have the person that you're paying hire the notary public to drop this document. You drop a document and basically says you paid John Doe $50 in lawful money, and Then you have it certified by the notary. You're both there, you're witnessing, yes, I paid Sam $50 or John Doe $50 for his car, and it's a lawful money, and you have serial numbers. You can record, these are all different numbers. You can record the serial numbers right on the document, and you both sign it, get it notarized, certified, and then you've actually paid for it with lawful money, and then you've actually owned it. And you do not go and record it with send it to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, whatever they call it in your state. You don't do that because now you're just signing it over to them. You're saying, oh, I can't handle this vehicle. I'm going to give it to you, and you make it be you regulate it for me. You make me a driver's license, insurance, etc. Pay the tax on it, all that stuff. But if you actually purchase it with lawful money, then you can actually own it. Because if you just traded with debt instruments, the Federal Reserve notes, you didn't own it. So the seller is happy. He's got his Federal Reserve notes, and the receiver of the $50 lawful money, he probably could care less about that. He might, you can make it part of the deal or not. He might just give it back to you or whatever. You record the numbers. But if you do that, if you record the numbers, then that's a one-time thing. That's something that's recorded, and there's the serial number. That's no longer available to you as lawful money if you do that way. But that's a way you can get buy a company with lawful money and actually own it for the confiscation sum. You can prove that you actually bought it instead of trading that instruments for private money. So I hope it didn't confuse a lot of you. You need to do some more research, more study. As I say on my TV and radio shows, don't believe anything I say.
Okay, we've got to let some people in.
I see anybody waiting.
Where do I go?
Let's see. Let me.
I need to unshare, don't I? There we go.
Yeah. Usually shows people waiting to get in here.
Can you see any?
Okay. No, I don't see anybody.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I hope that was helpful to everybody. Basically, in a layman's version of lawful money, it's gold and silver coins and U.S. Treasury notes, basically anything that's not printed by the Federal Reserve. And as you heard him say, you are using their private money when you use Federal Reserve notes. So that's why you're taxed on it. Lawful money is not taxable. And if I go here to the Wealth Guaranteed website, and I encourage all of you to go to this website. Right here on their website, they show the Federal Reserve seal on one side of this bill, taxable. And if you're using lawful money, your money, it's all tax exempt. And the assumption is, unless you say otherwise, the assumption is that you're using Federal Reserve money. So there are things that you have to do your banking in such a way and make your deposits in such a way that it's very clear that you are using lawful money. And also by doing this, you reduce the national debt. So if for no other reason, even if you're not trying to save on tax, this is a good thing to do to save on the national debt because that's where our national debt comes from. Also, I want to show you that at the bottom of this website, you can register for a live webinar. It's every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time. And I encourage you to go there because they have about a 40-minute presentation that talks about all of this in much more depth. And it's very informative. So after I saw this video, I went and looked up the Coinage Act of 1792. I honestly had never heard of this. And of course, this came out a long time prior to the Organic Act of 1871 that created the United States Corporation. So this was back when our country was actually a country, at least more so than it became in 1871. And basically, it just talks about how the operation of the mint is and the different ways that they will conduct things. But here in section 16, all the gold and silver coins which have been struck and issued from the said mint shall be lawful tender in all payments whatsoever. So back at that time, there were no Federal Reserve notes, and money was considered gold and silver. And also I saw in here that they also use copper. So you might want to go back and read that. It's really funny. I think it's in section 19 where I saw, no, that wasn't in section 19. It talks about the salaries that a lot of these people making. It's really funny to see. I wish I could remember which, let's see. Well, it's ridiculous low wages. And so what changed things, of course, was the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. And Woodrow Wilson signed off on it. It was enacted December 23rd, 1913, when most of Congress was off for Christmas break. It was pushed through, probably never would have been enacted had all of Congress been there. And after Woodrow Wilson passed this legislation, he realized what he had done. And here's a quote: "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit." And that is basically what it is. Federal Reserve does not deal with real money. It's just a bunch of accounting, I don't know, credits, assets, liabilities, mostly liabilities. And Federal Reserve notes are debt notes. So when you pay something using a Federal Reserve note, all you're doing is promising to pay, and you're increasing the debt in this country. So I'm going to skip on over here to definition. According to Title 12 is actually all about banking. And Title 12, Section 1813 is definitions. And what I want to highlight here is the definition of a deposit. The unpaid balance of money or its equivalent received or held by a bank or savings association in the usual course of business and for which it has given or is obligated to give credit. Notice the word credit. Either conditionally or unconditionally to a commercial, checking, savings, time, or thrift account, or which is evidenced by its certificate of deposit, thrift certificate, investment certificate, certificate of indebtedness, or other similar name, or a check, draft, drawn against a deposit account, and certified by the bank or savings alone. Now, these are all considered credit or money in the Federal Reserve System. Or credit, traveler's check, and also the receipt or equivalent of money when credited. So basically, we're not talking about real money when we're talking about the banking institute. We're talking about debits and credits, pretty much. Now, Title 12, USC 411 is the title of the part of Title 12 that discusses Federal Reserve notes. Now, this is a private company, the Federal Reserve. They like to make themselves look like they're part of the government. That's the reason they named themselves Federal. They've been fooling people of this country for over 100 years. But the key to this Title 12, Section 411 is Federal Reserve notes shall be redeemed in lawful money on demand at the Treasury Department of the United States in the city of Washington, District of Columbia, or at any Federal Reserve Bank. Notice the United States is in the city of Washington, D.C. So they're just talking about the corporation of United States Corporation. So even though there are not very many treasury notes still circulating, because they've really done everything they can to try to get rid of most of them, this law is still on the books. And so we can still take our Federal Reserve notes and redeem them for lawful money. And it may not be in the physical form of paper dollars, because our banking is now done digitally and electronically. So we can still do this, and there's a way to do it. They want us to not know about this law and not know what it actually means. Uh-huh.
You said section 12, title 12, section 1803.
1813. Yeah, that's where the definitions are. Thanks for asking. Okay, so we pretty much delineated the difference between Federal Reserve notes and lawful money. And that we should all be using lawful money as much as. There was something else I was. Sure. Okay, I'm going to go to discuss a little bit about the IRS. The first thing, when I found out that all of the money we pay to the IRS does not go to this country at all. It doesn't go anywhere to the 50 states that we live in. It goes directly to the International Monetary Fund. And that's not even in this country. And people ask, well, how do we pay for the roads? How do we pay for, the things that this country needs? Well, there are other taxes that we pay. The roads are paid for by fuel tax. We also pay tolls. Schools are paid for the most part by property tax. Sales tax pays for a lot of things that we need, and it's incurred by state, so it takes care of a lot of the needs in your state. So that was a big eye opener for me, and that really made me angry to know that people feel like they're doing the right thing by paying their taxes. They're being good citizens. They're doing what's right, and their money's going towards running this country, and it's just not true. So there is a part in the Constitution that mentions taxation. It's Article 1, Section 2. Trying to type with one hand. Section 2. Maybe that'll do it. Well, I wanted to show you. Let me see if I can find it on this one. No, that's not going to work. Basically, it says representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers. So basically, that's saying that the people of the country, the people in the 50 states, cannot be directly taxed by the government. Only the states can be taxed, and only by apportionment. Also, taxes are voluntary, except for those people who live in the District of Columbia or who work for the federal government. The rest of us filed a 1040 voluntarily, not knowing any better because the mainstream media blares on April 15th that you have to get your taxes in. And speaking of April 15th, that's a very interesting date. Why did they choose that date? I don't know the ultimate reason, but it's actually the same date that the Titanic sank, which was April 15th, 1912. That was a year before the Federal Reserve Act was signed. So maybe a coincidence, probably not. Does anyone have any questions before I go any further? No.
How do you use lawful money?
How do you what?
How do you use lawful money?
Notes for life. Like a check. Can
Okay.
you pay on a check?
Okay. There's a different way of banking, and it's a process, and they teach it at Wealth Guaranteed. But I do know that as much as possible, you should ask for anything that someone's paying you, should ask for it to pay you by check. And then when you endorse the check, you stamp it on the back. Lawful money demanded per 12 USC 411 and sign it. And there's some other things that you do too to make sure that, you keep good records. You make a copy of the front and back of each check. And especially if you're still filing tax returns, you want to keep all of those as backup to show that your deposits were lawful money. Does that help? What you stamp? Lawful money demanded per Title 12, Section 411.
When you endorse a check that way, do they deposit in a different type of account? Do they stream?
Well, you want to make sure you have a non-interest bearing account because interest is something that the Federal Reserve uses. So they created the IRS in order to make sure that they get their money back from all the money that we owe them and that they get the interest that is due. Basically, we're just paying them. And then what's left goes to the IMF, and who knows what they do to it, probably funding the one world order.
If you have a non-interest account, you still need to endorse it that way.
If you have a non-interest bearing account, you still need to endorse your checks. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You would bank just like you normally bank, but you would make sure that there are various ways to make sure that your bank knows this is how you're banking. I don't really know all the details of how to do it because I'm not a taxpayer. So, but I do stamp my checks before I deposit them, and I keep copies just to make sure.
And if you don't have a stamp, you can write it out. That's right, I write it out.
Yeah, you can write it out, but I started doing that. That gets a little tiresome.
Hardly ever get checks.
I was hoping you were gonna be here last week, for, the two guys that I brought in through the Zoom call. I don't know if you've watched the video of it or not, but
We were here last week,
you were here?
was I?
Oh, you were doing taxes.
It was April 15th. That's right, I'm sorry.
So anyway, if you haven't watched that video, you ought to go watch it and see what they're all about. KL is who does it's not sovereign citizen, it's just getting out of the income tax thing. And
Yeah, you know what? I did watch that. I watched it while I was working. I had to be at home. I couldn't make it in here. I was last minute filers.
Okay, so here's the the foundation for my question. He sets up a private trust for you, you know, in this, he's got all the documents, you just fill in the blanks and you're setting up a private trust.
Uh-huh.
Interest-bearing account. So, two-part question, whenever you put it in the private trust, he explained that the government knows that it cannot see a private trust, period. It cannot pierce it because it has nothing to do with it, because they work on trust law and that private trust is absolutely private.
Right.
It's a whole core of it. And that's the ancient exchange of revenue, assets, whatever, okay? So
Let me get him the time.
if somebody
Yeah.
were to write you a check,
The Zoom audience, period.
oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
we were streaming.
I don't know if you're here. This is better.
Okay. So my question is about basically a private trust. So if you have a private trust, which is a non-interest bearing account, and somebody does write you a check and say the check bounces, is it still considered the lawful money?
If you stamp it on the back, yes. But I mean, if it bounces, then it has never hit your account.
Right, but what I'm saying is if they give you a check and that's lawful money, just like, you know, it's an exchange, just like a debt note is, and it goes into your account, but they don't have the FDRs, not FDRs, the Federal Reserve notes to, you know, in their account to exchange for that in the Federal Reserve's process.
Mm-hmm.
Does the check still count towards it being a lawful deposit for the full amount?
Yes.
That's a very good, and so the second part of that would be, if you're doing a promissory note instead of a check to somebody, that has the same effect as a Federal Reserve note.
Right.
The problem is a lot of people don't understand that the promissory note is money,
Yes.
just like the Federal Reserve notes are.
I just check on your phone.
Very good point.
We need to get together later and discuss some more stuff.
Yeah, I'm just about finished, but you're right about that. And that gives me a segue into a book I was going to mention. There's a couple of books. Ken actually brought this to our attention. The 1,000 Paper Cuts Technique by George Tran. I got this book after Ken told me about it and read it. It's a very quick read. And it basically explains, and we can go over this in depth on another call, because I see it's almost time. But this is a really good book to read if you have a mortgage or if you've ever had a mortgage, because that's what it talks about. When you sign on your mortgage documents and you sign the promissory note, you've basically created money. And all the mortgage company does is goes to the treasury window and does an exchange, your money for money. Basically, they don't loan you any money. You know, basically they take what you gave them and exchanged it. And then they collect from you, and plus interest. So anyway, I recommend that book. And I also started reading another book that was mentioned in the 1,000 Cuts, and that's Modern Money Mechanics. It's written by someone from the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. And it basically talks about how it all works in the Federal Reserve. And I will tell you, it's a very dry read and it's very small print. So I've gotten through a little bit of it, but it's not very interesting. So I think that's all I have for today. Anybody have any more questions or comments?
How much do you know about promissory notes, how they work?
Just about what I just told you. He asked me how much I know about promissory notes. I'm still learning, just like everyone else. And this stuff is not intuitive to us because it's kind of smoke and mirrors.
Do you know anything about the securitization process?
The securitization process, do you mean like a secured party? No?
So well, we've got a rabbit hole to go through.
Yeah, that would be another,
So let me just say briefly.
we need to get you the microphone.
Okay. Okay, so I was asking if she knew anything about the securitization process. So basically, when you take out allegedly a loan, whether it be for real estate or car or airplane or whatever, you sign a promissory note. That is you paying for it, as we've already discussed. What they then do, and there's several levels of fraud in this whole process, because it's fraud in the inducement because they say that they're going to give you a loan or let you believe that, and that's not true. And on the documents, most of the time it says loan. That's not true. That's a fraudulent banking action. So when you have a promissory note where you've paid for something, they then sell it to what's called a REMIC, or it's a trustee that handles a REMIC. A REMIC is for real estate, it's real estate. It means real estate, mortgage, something.
Investment.
I don't remember. But anyway, what it's doing is when that trustee takes possession of it, they then convert the promissory note into another type of financial instrument. And then they split up that instrument into thousands, millions of pieces, whatever it is. And they combine it with everybody else's that was bought in that same package. So basically, a REMIC is a pool of mortgages. And when they split it up, the best analogy I've seen for it makes it pretty simple is you have a carrot, your neighbor has a carrot. You all have these collective carrots and you sell them to somebody. And that somebody then converts them into carrot juice. They can never go back to the carrot. It's just the way it is. So the same thing is happening with a mortgage or a car loan, plane loan, whatever. They are splitting it up and turning it into juice and mixing it with everybody else's juice. The REMIC is the pool of mortgages. They do the same thing. So the REMIC is real estate, and that's called mortgage-backed securities, MBSs. All other loans are called ABSs, asset-backed securities. And so when they've converted this, they then sell it to these investors. These investors could be, retirement funds, teachers, retirement funds, all kinds of, investment mechanisms. So when they do this, it's called a special purpose vehicle, SPV. And so when they go through that process, they have changed your promissory note into another financial instrument. Therefore, they cannot exist at the same time. That basically dissolves the promissory note. At that point, no one has standing to foreclose or collect or anything. And if you are 90 days delinquent in your so-called payments, the banks automatically on day 91 file for a claim. It's just automatic through the systems now, the computer systems. They file for a claim from the surety, which is basically the insurance company, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, a few others. And then AIG actually pays on that claim for the full amount of your loan, or whatever you want to call it. So if they loaned you, say, $200,000, and you paid 50% of that over time before you found out all this. If you default after that 90 days on day 91, the entity will pay the full amount to the servicer / trustee of the trust, or of that REMIC trust or ABS. They get paid in full, even though they've collected money from you all this time. Well, what we also aren't told is that when you sign that promissory note, that bank is allowed to sell it and get 10 times the amount of credits, where they can loan out that money 10 times from the money that is coming off of your promissory note. But then the Treasury actually allows them to go 30 times. So they're taking your mortgage for, say, $100,000, and they're multiplying that in other credit loans to other people for up to 30 times. And then you think about that, it's almost like an atomic effect where every one of those loans is multiplied 30 times. So,
I know what you mean now about securitization. That's in this book, The Thousand
Okay.
Cuts.
okay.
So,
How long does it take them before they get secured?
It's actually done before they even give you the loan. They have standing orders to sell all the loans that come in, most of the big banks anyway. They sell these loans in packages. They collect enough of them together. And so like every month, however many loans they've given out, whether they're mortgage loans or asset loans, they are already prepackaged to sell to these trustees of these trusts, and they create this trust, and it's all insured. So who is the injured party if you default? Nobody. Auto loans, every kind of business loan, everything that's not real estate. Real estate is mortgage-backed securities, MBS. Everything else is ABS, asset-backed securities. So it could be anything. So anyway, that's the nutshell of it.
There's a PDF version of the Thousand Cuts book online. You could search for it.
yeah.
What's the writer of that book?
George Tran, Tran. Thank you very much for that in-depth explanation. Yeah. That is what shows us that basically no one, this is what I read in Mr. Tran's book, no one's going to be able to show you the original note to your mortgage. Because you don't know anybody, because they sold it. Here he comes. He's going to talk a little bit more about it. This is a great subject.
Yeah, you just get away from the speakers here so there's not feedback. Let me just expand on that a little bit because you just remind me. So when you say if you're going to challenge the debt, that you're going to do a debt validation process, they will not, just like you said, they will not provide the original documents because they don't have them. Secondly, the banks never signed it because they never loaned you any money. That would be another fraud. Therefore, they don't sign it. They don't give you a copy of the unsigned document unless you order it in court. And then they might only produce a copy, which is a forgery. So they don't have any proof that they loaned anything because they didn't.
Yeah.
So they want you to believe that you did. But if you want to challenge, say, your mortgage, there's companies out there that will do a forensic audit on your mortgage, and they will look at the Fannie Mae and the MERS process and all this. They will look at all these documents or entries in the database, and they will point out how there was fraud. If there is anything that's signed, it's got a digital signature. A lot of times it's forgery. I've run into that in helping other people recently, where it was for a vehicle loan, and we demanded multiple times the original documents. They sent a photocopy, and they took a signature from, and it is not this guy's signature. We've got plenty of other documents, and he always signs where the signature is about 2.5 inches long. This signature that they copied from somewhere and pasted it on the promissory note, it's like 3/4 of an inch long, and it's hovering about 1/2 inch above the line. And this guy always signs across the line that he's supposed to be signing on. So the forgery is across the board through all of them, because they don't have it. So they're falsifying it. But this forensic audit is the way that you actually prove that they committed fraud. And these companies will give you 2 witnesses that are experts that will have sworn affidavits with the mortgage, or with the audit rather. And they will talk about all the things that are fraudulent in that, and they will appear in court for you as well. So that's a way to wipe them out. But thing is, most cases, they won't even go to court because they don't want this information to get out. They don't want the juries to know about it. And so they will settle before that, maybe the morning of the trial, but they will not go to court in most cases.
Is that Ron who was on the
No,
last?
no, well, Ron and KL are the foundation of what I've been doing and learning from them. And, but this is in addition to that. Now, Ron does that. They both do parts of that. They contribute to this.
Yeah,
And it's really good to go through their processes first. And then you get to if you're going to challenge a mortgage, or it works the same with a car loan or any other kind of loan. They securitize them all. And therefore, there is no holder in due course. There is never consideration done. It is all a fraud.
Hey, Randy, what's that cost to do a forensic audit?
I just have someone that just did a forensic audit, so I've got the documents and I've seen the whole thing. It cost him $2,500. Not a bad deal. If you're gonna challenge like $100,000 note or more, only costs $2,500. And then what you save out of exposing them for their fraud is golden.
Thank you very much. So if anyone doesn't have any more questions, I think we've finished. I think we finished right on time. Oh my gosh, 12:30. Okay, are we gonna take a break?
I think. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm ready to eat.
All right, I'll tell them about that.
Okay. I'm excited. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And then, so they make the, pretty much.
Texas problems. He finds that it is that they don't want to, I get no reason they don't want to.
Yeah.
He was one of these leaving things, straight up. Shit, honey. He's saying, can't stay, if they move up in some, they just can't stand there. Those are. They're mad. Do something with him.
Yeah, I drank all my bed, you know, that's simply my. I am people.
So what?
I am.
Cody,
What's that?
they're holding Cody.
Yeah, well, he's supposed to be on. But
Sunny. That's gonna be long. They then is translated as a gift from the white tigers.
Trying to find the email you sent to Allison Cook.
Japanese. And I did a white tiger on emotional IQ. And
You sent an email.
tigers as a vehicle. Yeah. Emotionally, you know, for 3 years, I'm school ranger, don't have any academics, so I'm probably a lot.
What things?
You know, reading, writing, your
So they got a trick, I mean, they didn't know. You know, they're gonna say.
for a while, and they're just started for 100 years.
Way to do a deal. First of all.
And aggressive. So emotional IQ says your success in life.
Mine can have, so Steve, mine can have stuff on YouTube. Lifestyle, so the ways to sell their budget. So the one I like, they do all the best stuff, apply to get. I see the check, and I don't know if that's the one. That's the only thing for me running into running. It's all, it's in my eyes.
They have a branch. Their birth rate line to replace the population.
Yeah.
Same with South Korea. They're saying year, last year, 2 years ago, first time ever.
That's one. Yeah.
Right, there's then baby.
So then.
You know, I need you.
Well, I mean, not you, my children, it's kind of silly, I don't mean, a lot of, you know, that's places where there's brother and younger to play fall, if you can just, hey, give me the, and then.
So.
Begin with.
Well, it's getting confidence too, wise.
Just.
Stop there. Kim Fessler, but he finished it.
You know, funny stuff that Kathy's scary, he's not a kid, areas in those two privacy, they might use like, they're going to this, there is state or there's a whole lot of.
You know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was Oregon's.
You could do it each day.
In 1970s, child pretty.
So there are people only in marriage. Those are the right answer.
Kids. Attention, economy.
You know, but this is right. I don't really right now. Then it's. Well.
Defeated this life for us. Now, it's guaranteed this, it's something that.
Yeah.
Ask it on and. I can be cool, my hundred image.
We saw man for, had just 2 boys back in the old. 48 hours later, they were sitting on the floor and losing. Yeah, they are to the walls, right? The kind of confidence fingers was full. And you should have seen that, yeah, they're made for company, family, and then he knew that there was a stress in that.
So my son with that teeter, it's the guided figure. I didn't make any decisions.
That was his high saying.
Call it, call it.
This streets.
You calling me? Not going through.
So I know.
You're from the full driver.
Watch that.
So, no, the new disease is vaccines, unwired immune. They, like AIDS.
But sorry,
Vaccine.
we're here to choose your
It's a bad time for children.
So maybe it's just one.
Bad time for you. You get stuck all shit.
Kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm stuck, I'm stuck.
That's not one. I had.
Hopefully my mind.
There was sick.
I was like.
Team go.
Which know that.
Really? Yeah.
You know,
I know that. But you know, that's not my.
that license. So, you know, that's. Can be right.
I would.
Can't. Yeah. Joe, all. Common.
I would.
The town hasn't to exception.
Stop it.
So there's no security attitudes behind the driver's license. Yes.
That was just what we said.
Right. So that's something they can kind of
Oh
control.
my God.
And that's, you know, that's law. The parking ticket.
It was.
Traffic is ordinary. And you know, the whole that.
Yeah.
And I'm just.
Bill. Well, that stuff. All my stuff.
Instead of giving our.
That's a VA. No, it's not right.
the
No.
Stretch. More matches, it's organized around drums, governance.
Yeah. Anyway, one
Reuse from the years.
lot of good stuff here. Yeah, I understand. What is system? It's even.
Yeah, get out of here. So, curious, yeah, we get out of here.
It's got this negative connotation.
I'm over.
Okay, you're.
Yes. Yes. When you're just there and you get actually applying.
She got.
You're right, Harwood, when we get done here. Harwood, then you're gonna also give you money in the back of the room. Yeah, back to her, so I get done.
Just a little bit. Works on hers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, you gotta respond, get the money, it's lady, and she texts you. After this free, we got those. Got down to first big, but that's the last.
That's what we used to.
You'll see the guy that spoke last week. That's.
Next. Yes.
Think of feeling correct there.
But
Did they make up?
you get like you see, it's like a rock. 10 times just
Because they.
get everything out there, it works.
It was flat.
Then you can say.
And by the way,
Later, I can't remember.
I don't license, and that's where the first area is somewhere. But I'm not.
Just the art.
If I can go to school, I'm back to school. So I can do it. I can see. I go to school.
Well, I was looking tired after your TL. Really not, my daughter's got your, they just keep going for. They got your. Right there.
Back and you know, it's
Yeah, but I expired on it.
I see like that, this, the jokes in church, the Congress did, you know.
He's wanting. $33.
Derek.
Why 33?
What do you think about this guy's
Found
comment?
it, that's the highest.
President Johnson, one thing.
It's very nice.
Nice.
The ovations.
Let's bring it for us whenever we go. So what we.
To be reality.
Most people. I can just be that one, I don't see this one here. So they're.
I know he was. There's nothing, you know, it's a reasonable living. Well, my thing's part says here's, reasons. Listen, this is, you know, they start like, slims, being balls, powers that.
Until it's start building.
That's probably down.
It was, you know, like articles.
It shows what was.
Their system is, yeah, there's 3-star pack.
The vision is we said.
You'll give them the electric.
Wait,
Right up.
what's his name?
It comes
I
out.
don't know, Ken and I just really $7. Get us to that cash.
Pretty interesting. That's all right.
He says he's been on some level.
Okay. So it's speed, or you got anything. They're all impressed.
And then, and they created, you guys, they created.
It's the same as it.
And so.
Now, last one, maybe you'll get to do your.
It's just. That's all I'm doing, all I'm thinking.
You know.
There was no way.
Several things that hold.
Very.
People. Ben Franklin says, tears which be like sheep and are. They really. Who believe that's right.
Where's that?
But the people are.
Anyone need to go look later, those are extraordinary, those bastards. So right there.
They try to make it 2,000.
You can do that for. If you're friends for the.
Let's ask him.
In America, he's all in America.
He gets it out.
So, you know.
And they just have
the manager, it's not finished.
It's been a long run. China, well, they say what's taking on. Not like really, they do not be. And they're come here for.
No, they're not.
They
could not survey.
With only one
Because we can't get into
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I understand. Just because we're government.
Down there. They're talking about. And then
I know, no, that's where they
just.
Why they're very like.
Most advantages,
They're not.
They are more outside of such a option. Okay, another issue. They can't do what we do, they can't do what we do.
The thing is, those people can't.
so there's, I don't listen to the nonsense topics.
That's the one thing you just even.
That's good, not that.
Well, that case.
So, I'm a job.
Yeah,
So,
And that's what she did. First thing they will do, when you're shocked,
Didn't want to show the.
when you kill the citizens, priest, like you start, it's the contact with the county that will shut to ground.
certified
And by.
So look at the video.
at the state level.
And you see the cops.
Somebody said,
Went on and like. Well, the got a fire back, some cops.
1700.
So, markets.
And where we at now?
Now we're down to.
We were low. We're low pile.
That's easy.
They home socks.
Say, like, you would accept that. The university. It's better, but now it's because they split leads in religion. Religion is not, but you're gonna. We should.
Yeah.
You have people like that.
Receive it back. And so, student down to this state university. Because what they down here, money, they talk about their country, they're a mistake. And this is what I was at, and stuff, and so once you get those three, then you're still to the treasury, the state. And then they double authentication. They're authenticating the state's authentication.
Right,
The state is authenticating the county's certificates, et cetera.
they put priorities on religion.
But anyway,
When they put priorities on religion,
it's weird. They put this
you're
document on top.
you're taking away, and that includes on back down there. You're taking.
Yeah, but you can spell down the way, then you. You're our security, ever realize freedom
Is not something
so you get. It's sheet. Have two documents, discuss two of them.
And Ben Franklin said,
Once you've got that done.
said,
You can fill out not the rest of the stuff.
be like, she, just wait some more.
Garlic.
And we have a.
It's just ready.
Everybody said, the way you want to take lodges, and there's only a few pieces of it.
So you're gonna be economic raising and you're doing, and you're gonna send all three, some kind of order that you will. But anyway, you only need three. So then you'll receive it in the state. If I get, then you'll send a copy of that in with this full packet of all other affidavits, documents, there is a difference, one's called, if it's, this first package is called the declaration of status. So what you're doing is you're saying, I no longer am under your guardianship, I'm not dead.
Tell a
You know,
lie about
my,
what they're trying to
second
get
and
over
the
me.
local court where is not, you know, my dead representation, it's nothing more than like a hairball, you know, hair or fingernails, creature that is not me, does not represent by a human.
Oh.
Human is, but the alive man or woman. So, you know, but you're making all these declarations, I'm not lost at sea. All these other things, you're telling the truth.
Oh, okay.
So.
Well, if you're alive.
In this packet too.
Well, the other,
Airport County.
like a petition,
And
he's skilled,
and then you're just.
Yeah.
This document.
his
And it'll
quality.
be stamped, you know.
Bring the magic
There,
tricks
new members and what that is.
That's what people like. That's what it is.
Page,
By
some,
magician.
such and such page, valid or special one page.
Then
Is it's in the feature back.
are
Then
not
you
liar.
take.
liars.
And I can see there, but they want.
They want to follow the paper with all the regulations.
So when you
Not good.
donate.
And to understand that is important.
Yeah.
Second form, second. So.
And you may need to talk to the group.
You, and by that term, you should have your seal.
Aye.
Trust
But you go along
Which
with
is an imposer, you get these, you know, old, 2-inch, seals.
establishment.
You put on these documents, but
It shows how stupid the people are.
$1 stamp.
Because
Some of these.
in the Constitution,
No
and
value.
for 200 years,
So stamp 200 is. What's the one 13, 30 years,
they started this with Roger Williams, 1612.
It's always close to
1612.
Yeah.
That was always 400 years ago.
What's that?
Roger Williams, our religion over here to America, we kicked out of any, or they would go along with English.
Really, so.
Now listen,
You'll send us to 16.
he was the
One is POTUS,
a
one
Baptist
is
preacher.
Secretary of State, one is.
He, the other bad guy, he said he was one of the two there.
The.
He was a
state.
Roger Williams. He was a treasurer, he came around here and he kicked out of English. Because he went to.
When I was reading.
Episcopalian, English church.
Something like, you know.
He wanted to go back
back to Columbus or
He
something.
was, and he created the first Catholic church.
Church in the United States.
Indian,
You know, trying
we talked to Indian,
early for smear, they, the owners of all souls, so they're big, no, anybody got.
you know, so you're his, and that's the ignorance of certain.
You know, these are people here,
Today, including Glenn and
everybody this. So then you.
They don't want-
because
they don't want-
they never send
They
never
got
got the
after 14 days, they're saying.
ability, because the schools went down.
At times.
Failure had shifts.
Yes.
You have that thing going up.
They were talking
Have you as my trust?
lies. They were
They
talking.
were talking.
And so then they.
And they-
And so after. You see a notice
Like
like.
pretending to be like sheep.
All.
Sounds
Instead
good.
of figuring out themselves.
And
Not
then.
And I remember, I keep telling you, don't. You know, take your ready to talk to you. I mean, it's a training.
Yeah.
So.
So I don't want to get out of that training.
Hey, Cody.
And that's important, to stay in that, so I'm.
What are you looking at? Yes.
Think about hearing the things in this.
Are you able to do Zoom call?
I'm being controlled by the government so bad
Not good.
with the VA.
Okay, well, it's not your power team.
Look at it, Veterans Affairs. You know, keep it open.
For deep fast song on it. What taste God? It's clear. So yeah, this is please.
They can see it.
I had a.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
All
right. So,
No, I went to these.
All right,
Okay, everybody, we got our second speaker. I think most of you have heard him last time. Cody, and Cody, what's your last name?
Loomis, like the armored car
Loomis.
company.
So Cody, I sent you an email with a summary of my case. Did you get a chance to review that?
I haven't. No, why don't you go ahead and give me the details right now? Fill me in.
Okay. So back in March 2023, I was doing a chemistry experiment and there's a small explosion. I have a PhD in chemical engineering physics. So it's just playing around. A neighbor called the police with a video of a small explosion, claiming it shook their windows. When asked if there was any threat of fire to their house, they said no. The police interviewed 3 of my roommates and my landlord. Oh, what's that? Okay. The police interviewed 3 of my roommates and my landlord. All said I was just a scientist playing around doing some experiments, and that I wouldn't harm anybody, and there was no threat. They didn't feel threatened at all. The SWAT team arrived a little later. They ended up breaking into the house with military vehicles through the front and the back. They shot me 9 times with beanbag rifles, and they took me straight to jail. The arrest report, a warrant, admitted it was warrantless. They didn't even have a warrant. A few months later, I went into the sheriff's station to get the police report, and I was arrested again, claiming they had a warrant.
You went in to get the police report and they arrested you again?
Yes, they didn't want me having it. They ended up redacting like 70% of the police report.
Yep.
There is no examination trial. They created a fake indictment that lacks the court seal. It fails to say true bill. There's no minutes proving there were at least 12 jurors. And they filed it 302 days after the arrest. And by Texas Code of Criminal Procedure 32.01, mandates the case be dismissed after 180 days. They, when I was in court, they threatened me with 180 days in jail if I didn't have a bar attorney the next time. They threatened me with 20 years in jail if I missed a hearing. A no-knock nighttime search warrant was fabricated 2 days after the search, and oddly, it was notarized 2 days later, and it has an unsigned return. And the return omits saying there's a gun that they took. I was given a forced plea over my objection. We had a common law court case, and it ruled to dismiss the case immediately. They're ignoring that, obstructing justice. I challenged jurisdiction 5 times. Each time the judge just said denied and didn't have the prosecutor prove jurisdiction. I filed a demurrer. They just simply said denied. I was denied a trial by jury of my peers. I tried appealing it. I did a writ of mandamus. That was denied. I tried to do appeal, and they claimed they didn't have jurisdiction for an interlocutory appeal.
Mm-hmm.
And they denied a motion for retrial.
Yep.
So it's just been accepted. It's just been accepted into the Court of Criminal Appeals.
Okay.
So
The one mistake that you're making is that you're playing inside of their sandbox.
okay.
Okay. All of these things are egregious and terrible, and I want to see some justice. But the process you're going to have to do is use you need to get docket numbers, you need to get transcripts for every single appearance that you made, and you need to go through them all, and you need to make a list and write a story out. Okay, just a story in plain language, your story of the series of events from start to finish. Okay, and then what you do is you probably use Grok to upload that and go, you can itemize all of the Title 18 criminal codes that you're going to use to file a tort claim against the bonding and the oath of office of each one of those individuals. You need the names of the SWAT team, and you need to FOIA the certified copies of their oath of office that's required by Title 5, Section 3331 of the United States Code, an oath of office to the Constitution, the judges, the prosecutor, the DA, the Attorney General at the time, the governor of the CEO at the time. You're going after all of them. Okay, so the list is going to be longer than your arm. I can tell you right now, the tort claim for damages plus triple damages on this is probably going to be in excess of about $2 billion by the time you're done. You can
Wow.
basically file a commercial lien at the end of this when you go through the process on the entire state of Texas.
Wow.
Okay. Now, understand that right now, going into it, define your terms of victory. Okay. You're going to use the administrative procedure process to file a tort claim. You're going to use the affidavit after you make your story. Okay. You're going to use the affidavit process, and I can send you a template that is going to use established case precedent as to what an affidavit is and how to satisfy it. And you're going to sign it under penalty of perjury under 28 USC 1746(1), which is without the United States. Okay. And there's language in that affidavit that will get you, that will establish your status, standing, and jurisdiction and keep it throughout this entirety of this process. You're going to go through, you're going to send them the affidavit. You're going to send the Attorney General. You're going to send the judges. You're going to send the current police chief of the precinct where the cops came from. Everybody that had a violation, you're going to send it to the CEO, address it, registered mail. You're going to have thousands of dollars in registered mail receipts from this, and it's going to be huge to keep track of. So get yourself a filing system and keep track of it. You're going to send them the affidavit. Right in the affidavit, it's going to be an offer to contract. You know, you're going to use established court case precedent to have them rebut the affidavit by point for point counter, rebuttal, signed and sworn on a penalty of perjury, or you're going to give them an offer to settle right there. You're going to give them a way out, right? This is scripture. You give them, if they repent and say that they're sorry, you're going to let them go right now. And you're going to walk away free and clear, and you're not going to get anything. But if they choose to continue, you're going to give them an out, right? Dismiss the case, written notice, clear the record, and an apology. And this all goes away and we're done. And you guys leave me the fuck alone. And you can put that in your affidavit. You can put that language because you have the right to free speech. Okay. And if they don't, you send them the next one, the notice of fault. And you put in the affidavit 21 days to respond plus a 3-day grace period. 24 days later, in the mail, registered. That's their second chance to respond. Same thing. Guys, here's the contact of the provost marshal. And if he sits there, and that's going to be the National Guard, the Army National Guard, at the nearest joint base, which would in Texas, I'm not sure. In Alaska, it's Elmendorf Richardson for me. And the U.S. Provost Marshal is a federal enforcement to enforce the Constitution. And to be a member of the military, he must have an oath to the Constitution. Like, that's assumed. And if the guy doesn't perform, you put a warrant out for his arrest with his common law. I mean, if this is going to escalate, so sooner or later, somebody's going to have to perform to the rule of law, or else you issue the commercial lien on the Capitol building, and we rally the troops. And let me know as we get through the process, and we'll go take over the damn Capitol and say you're all under arrest for treason. Get the gallows up. You're being hanged. We're done with this shit. And I mean, that's ultimately where it goes. Like, you have to be willing to take it that far. Because what happens is when they know that they screwed up and you start talking about demurs, you start talking about jurisdiction, they have to go on offense and they have to tell you no. Because if they don't, they've already know that they've committed a crime, and they know that you know enough about it to know that the rules are being broken and you're entitled to due process and you're entitled to remedy. But if you don't know the process to go through to get there, then what ends up happening is people just throw up their hands. And these guys are sweating when you do this. When the first notice shows up, the notice of fault, opportunity to cure, and then the 10 days after that with the 3-day grace period, and you send them a notice that all of this is going on the public record and that they still have an opportunity to cure and make it right, according to the original affidavit. Like, if you go in and do a trial of jury and saying, make it right, you guys, all you have to do is clear this from the record, leave me alone, and knock it off, and it all goes away. Right? I mean, you go to a jury trial with that kind of out for officialdom to say, yeah, we screwed up. You're right. We won't do this anymore. But if you don't, we're coming for all of you. Like, there's no way that that kind of conduct, once it gets out among the state national community, is going to end up being anything that's lacking the moral authority for action, right? And that's really what we're dealing with here. So right now, you're going to have to decide, is this something that you're willing to take to the level of contacting the military, contacting the governor, contacting the president and the attorney general and the FBI and saying, here's what happened. Whose side are you on? We're showing up. We hope you're on our side, because if you're on their side, be prepared to be shot at, because we are. We're done with this shit. We're taking our country back. We want the rule of law. We've had enough. That's ultimately where it's going to end up, right? And so if you take it far, so you have to be willing to go that far. Otherwise, I'd say if it's already done and they're leaving you alone, what's your peace worth, right? If you're not willing to do that, you have to decide right now. If you're not willing to take it that far and they're leaving you alone, let it be. Let it go.
Yep.
If they're not leaving you alone, then if they're still on offense, well, it's time to go on offense back at them.
Get it. And how do I get compensated for the damage they've done?
That would be in your schedule of fees associated with every Title 18 criminal violation that they did. So removal of due process, illegal search and seizure. What I just did is I have a $32,800,000 claim lien against the Coast Guard that's in process right now. And that was from 1 hour of them trying to come on board my private property to do a safety inspection. And so if you do you already have a schedule of fees secured on the public record?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay. So the first thing that's got to happen, are you familiar with the redemption process?
Vaguely.
Okay. Let's back up here a little bit then. So the way in which all of this tyranny is fomented against us is because the courts are treating you as the ens legis. They're treating you as the corporation that is their creation, right? That they went ahead and declared bankruptcy of the main corporation in 1933 and then made you the surety through the tacit agreement of your signature as purser on that ship in commerce, right? That's the conduit through which this nonsense is proliferated on us. And so what you have to do is, in order to have a standing to even be able to go into a court and say, I'm here to call for a constitutional Article 3 court of record and ask for a summary judgment based on the truth and fact placed upon the record by my documents. You know, I'm here as an agent of the ens legis for the, you know, and then, I mean, you can have the information with you. Call out the court by their Dun and Bradstreet number. You call out the court that they are authorized by Title 28 of the United States Code, which is not law. It's corporate bylaws for the corporate entity, you know, United States of America, Inc., which is a crown corporation out of Vatican. You know, I mean, you have all this stuff and you put it in the court document, right? And you go in and then you reiterate that. And the judge and you then go to battle and he tries to get you to tacit agree in the moment, and you just rebut, and stand your ground. And so, but what you have to do first is you have to, like when David Straight used to talk about building your island, it's the affidavits that rebut all the presumptions that you put on the public record that then they must take judicial notice of, that you can put into every single notice of appearance every single time you have to go into their jurisdiction, because they are public servants. And if they don't have an oath to the Constitution and an oath of office on file, signed and notarized, then you can put it right in your documents that if they don't, they're under arrest for treason right there because they're engaged in inland piracy. And so, you know, but you have to have these things in place according to the rules that they use to gain their authority, which is the maximum commercial contract law. So I would recommend that before you do any of this stuff, you get a hold of all 4 of the National Liberty Alliance books and go through them. Do you guys have those already?
Not yet.
Okay. You can get them on Amazon. They used to be about $10 a piece. Get all of those, and then get online and get a PDF copy of the redemption manual. It's like 600 pages long. But what it does is it defines the process through which you take superior title through a commercial lien of the Ents Legis Corporation itself. And what that does is, using the commercial maxims of contract law, first in line, first in time, any charge, which is a true bill in commerce, that the courts can make against that Ents Legis, which is the only thing that they can see, you have superior claim to. So it's just like if you are a mortgage lender and you're in the first lien position, and then, some other company is dumb enough to give the guy who's going under a second mortgage for a bunch of cash before he loses his house, right? That second lien position doesn't get any of the money when the house is foreclosed and sold on the open market. The first lien holder does, right? So you're the first lien holder, which means that they can't take the surety into their possession in order to collect and foreclose upon the value that they have claimed in the commercial chamber against the Ents Legis, right? Because if you're the surety, that's what's taken into custody. That's how you end up going to jail. They make a claim in commercial commerce against the Ents Legis and then take the surety as collateral while the performance requirements of the claim are met, which is a certain amount of time in jail. And unbeknownst to most, almost every single prison and jail is privately owned. And what happens is the charge is put against your Ents Legis, and the trust is access to sell the debt while you're in surety, incarcerated, and warehoused. So we rebut all these things through this process. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to my mentor, and we'll see if we can get you guys in touch with him. And the documentation that he's got, what's that?
I said that'd be great.
Ask him
The
if
documentation that he's got to send to the Treasury, to the Secretary of State, to your local governors, to it's quite extensive. But just reading and studying those documents is so enlightening as to fill in the gaps, so to speak, which a person needs before you go to war with these people, because you've got to know this stuff inside out, upside down, backwards, and sideways, so that no matter what kind of manipulation or tactic the judge or the prosecutor tries to use, you can just come up in real time. Like, it'll just be an awareness that you have about, no, bullshit, you can't do that. First in line, first in time. I'm sorry, Judge, are you trying to legislate from the bench? Are you subject to the Administrative Procedures Act or not? Like, what court is this? What article of the Constitution are you operating under? 1, 2, there's 3. If you're not operating under this is a tort claim, breach claim, what is this? Where's the victim? What the hell's going on here? What kind of sham out operation are you running?
Cody,
Yes.
this your mentor KL?
No.
Okay, we had him on last week. I was just curious if you were going through him.
No.
So
No. I haven't ever seen any of his paperwork. I'm sure it's great, but I don't know. I mean, the stuff that I've learned seems to be pretty all encompassing, as far as the different groups that I've talked with. And so I think that it would be, let's put it this way. I don't think that anybody in this movement should be so convicted as to what process or which way they're going to go until they gain a little bit of perspective with the different strategies and different theories. And as long as it's something that you can tactically defend, go for it. So if somebody in your group already has KLs done and they understand that and have had success with it, man, do that. Don't start over. That's the one thing that was really confusing for me when I first started all this, is that I thought that it was like going to be a square peg in a square hole. It's not even close to the truth. This is an art form. It really is. It's an art form, and there is no one way that is proper or correct. I would say just figure out where your sense of victory is, what your definition of victory looks like, and then start seeking the information to get you there. But victory for me would be to hang all these treasonous bastards on the White House lawn.
Right. Yeah, I'm there with you. You mentioned filing my fee schedule in the public. Is that with like a newspaper, or is it in the court file?
I recommend finding a county that's halfway close to you that will publicly record affidavits. Right now, I'm using Summit County in Utah, and they are very receptive. They're very helpful. They even have stamps and authorization that they put on pages that call it an affidavit of truth and recognize what it is. Because generally, most counties that you run into are only there to record land legal documents for land, right? Land transfers and quitclaim deeds and liens and that kind of thing. And so, but this Summit County in Utah is really, really on the ball. Like, I think that the people in that county are actually in state nationals, and they're in those offices.
Oh, interesting. And you can use that even if you're in a different state?
Absolutely. Yep. The it's I forget exactly the it's a court case where based on a clause in the Constitution where, you know, one ruling in one judicial precinct or district is just as relevant as if it was in a different part of the country. And that's to be able to do things like extradite criminals, where you can't just go across state lines and get away from crimes, right? And well, it works both ways. That door swings both ways.
Do they charge for this to file those affidavits?
Yes, Summit County has a website, and they've got a fee schedule. And just make sure to use postal money orders rather than checks, because it is interstate, and you want to use the postal money order to pay for that fee.
Summit County, Utah.
Summit County, Utah.
You described how to use the Administrative Procedure Act. Can you describe how to enforce that?
That's what the provost marshal, you enforce it with commercial claims. So the only thing that you can do to get remedy in their arena when they've violated your constitutional rights. So let's back up a little bit. The Constitution is a trust indenture. Okay. The founding fathers committed their sacred honor, and they formed a compact, which was the Declaration of Independence, and they died for it. They paid dearly for it. Like, I forget the amount but of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, I think like 80% of them ended up murdered. Their land was burnt and seized. Their families were murdered. Some of them had to flee and live in caves. One guy ended up going back to his wife and his kids, and his wife was dead. Only 2 kids were left alive. I mean, these guys paid dearly, right? Like, they were ready to pay the piper, and they did. And so, but what that created through that sacrifice and the payment that was performed by those individuals, the way that the trust indenture is written, it's for the posterity. Well, that's us. So they would be the grantors or the trusters, right? The public servants of the corporation that the Constitution created. And you can get right into the Constitution and read it. And the Constitution refers to both the United States of America and the United States. And the only thing that was delegated to the United States was the ability to regulate interstate commerce. That's it. And so with this system of fraud, where we've been drug into commerce, we the people have been drug into commerce without our understanding, without our knowledge. They're using the commercial maxims of contract law to foment this tyranny upon us by our tacit agreement. And so with an understanding of trust law about how the founding fathers were the grantors, the public servants of the federal corporation and its subsidiary corporations, which is now all the state of states through the Buck Act, all of those individuals in those public offices are the trustees, and we the people are the beneficiaries, right? And so when you're engaged in commerce, when you have commercial plates from the DMV on back of your car, and when you are summoned to produce a driver's license, you're agreeing that you're in commerce, right? But if you know all these things and you ask the right questions, you're generally going to end up with a face full of gravel on the side of the freeway with impounded and in jail for a few days. So your remedy is tort claim, but you have to have this island built first in order to access your rights through that private trust law, which is the trust indenture, right? Using the commercial maxim of contract law to gain a superior standing, to gain title and a allodial title to the ens legis, which is the straw man. All right. And so in order to use the administrative process, you need to have some sort of a portal, if you will, using trust law that gives you standing to be seen from behind a firewall in their court systems. And that is by taking control of the ens legis in the commercial chamber and then using the precedent that the government has already given us that we're able to enter that ens legis into security agreements, commercial security agreements that are enforceable in the courts, and that is through driver's license, your selected service, social security numbers, statutory violations. I mean, the precedent is infinite, right? We get to do that. So we create language in these documents that takes all of that value that we've created through that redemption process, hypothecates it, and allocates it to another jurisdiction with the unlimited ability to contract and puts it into a trust. Okay. And so what you do then is in that trust, as one of we the people, you stand on the Constitution and hold your trustees, your public servants, to the box that the Constitution puts them in. And if they don't have their oath of office on file as required by 5 USC 3331, then they can leave you the F alone and pay you $250,000 for their trespass against, for each right. Anyway, the schedule of fees is pretty extensive, and it's in the documentation that my mentor can get you. And so, but with that, you put all that on the public record and make it a self-executing contract. And one thing that you can do now in commerce is have a unilateral contract, right? In the private side, between the people, the only thing that can happen is full-term disclosure of terms and conditions, conveyance of value. It's got to be fair. It's got to be, it's got to be on the up and up to be enforceable of a contract. Well, out in commerce, it's not the case. The precedent is that you can just put something out there like they do in the Federal Register all the time. Don't tell us, and then hold us accountable and write you violations for a bunch of nonsense garbage that they hid in the Federal Register, right? Or come up with something and don't tell anybody and put it in statute, then, this, that, and the other. Well, in commerce, you can do that because they did it to us. So you put the value that you claim on the commercial security agreement, the commercial chamber, into a trust, add to it a schedule of fees for the one of we the people, the beneficiary, when the trustees violate the trust indenture that you create, right? And then what you do is you use the Administrative Procedures Act, because they're subject to that as public servants under Title 28 of the Department of Justice. And you go through and use that Administrative Procedures Act to enforce your commercial claim for damages.
That's great. Last time you described how to do a special endorsement on a promissory note. What do you do if you're a dealership and they recognize that you did that and they don't accept it?
Sue them.
Sue
Sue them for breach of contract. They can't deviate from the Uniform Commercial Code. No way. I mean, they try, but
are they acting as trustee when you go into when you fill out that loan application?
it's a little different. It's a little different because the UCC exists inside of private law, inside of the State Department, and it's basically all banking, right? All it is for banking. And under House Joint Resolution 192 of the 73rd Congress, there is no money anymore, right? And so everything is dischargeable. And in the UCCs in Article 3 and Article 1, the definitions define that a negotiable instrument is in no way, shape, or form money. It's not money. So the only way that there is currency created by the Constitution, because we the people are the full faith and credit of the United States, you pledge your future labor through that same surety agreement, right? So you're just using their fraud against them. And in that arrangement, the individual that is accessing the comptroller of the currency window through a finance, so any financing company that is going to be able to issue a loan, which is really just a private administrative contract, to buy a car or any automobile, is using your credit as the signatory of the ens legis to create a promise to perform. It's a bond, right? Like I promise that I will pay $700 a month every month before the 15th of the month, for the next 72 months in order to purchase, and in conveyance, I get this vehicle. But I'm getting charged 8% interest per annum. And so that's a total payment of this, and it's this much principal, and it's $70,000 of principal, and it's $56,000 of interest over the life of this administrative contract. Right? Like that's under the UCCs, that's a enforceable contract that you're creating because there's a promise to perform a specific set of circumstances in a specific time. Okay. So under the UCCs, when you study them and they've written in these things where these financing companies can then use the rules that we don't know about, that they never told us, to steal that promissory note because it's your credit. There is no ability to even pay that debt, right? Under House Joint Resolution 192, as soon as you made the agreement, it's done. It's over, discharge. Well, what they do is they wait 72 hours until that's why you date it. So after 72 hours after that date, on the morning of the 4th business day, the vice president of that financing company goes in and uses UCC 3205 to specially endorse that promissory note to pay to the order of their financing company. So they use the promissory note that you created in those performance terms. That's the reason why the promissory note is signed different than the administrative return payment schedule. That's why you have to sign like 7 times, because they're all individual contracts. Well, if you take that promissory note and write with a blue pen, and I tell you, here's a homework assignment. Go and read the UCC3s and find the Uniform Commercial Code rule in Article 3 that defines that anything handwritten supersedes anything typeset, supersedes anything printed. So the order of hierarchy is printed, typeset. So if you take it in typewriter, anything in typewriter, doesn't matter when it was signed. You can just endorse it, especially under 3205. And anything you put in that endorsement without recourse is what the promissory note is subject to. Well, they use this to steal your credit, sell it back to you, and enslave you to the debt on that vehicle and that promissory note. So in a system that isn't made to steal your credit, steal your value, there would actually be a fair contract where you could go in and you could borrow some value from somebody at a fair price and take it over here and purchase that car, that vehicle, and you go, oh, well, this is going to be for me. So I don't need it. I just need the MCO. They'd be like, okay, no problem. You put your private plates on it. Cops leave you alone. And unless you hurt somebody with it, nobody would even talk to you. You could do 100 mile an hour down the freeway if you wanted, and nobody'd even touch you. But if you get that thing titled and give the title, you get a certificate of title back. The state actually owns the car, and you're just renting it from them when you pay your license and registration. Then you're subject to all the statutes, because the state is the entity that owns the car, not you.
Okay. Cody, can you get a title without being registered?
What do you need a title for? You already got the MCO.
Well, okay,
It's a certificate of title. It's not really a title.
okay. I thought
It's an abstract of title. So in
registered.
Ron Gibson's book, Suits in Chancery, which is all about equity, he talks extensively about legal nature and legal, what is it? Oh gosh, it's escaping me. Anyway, the 2 separate kinds of title to things. It's basically the difference between the legal fiction and the living man, right? So if you get a certificate of something, it's just an idea. It's a representation of the actual thing, and the actual thing exists somewhere else. So if there's more than 2 signatures on anything that you register, you don't own it.
Okay, what's the name of that book?
Ron Gibson's Suits in Chancery.
And you mentioned suing the dealership. Where would you sue them? Which court?
Probably local circuit court. You got to have your island built, and you'd sue them for damages. Like, all right, give me back my credit. Go to the Federal Reserve window. You got a promissory note. Give me the credit or give me the car. Your choice. You don't get both.
Cody, is there a source to find a step-by-step on how to build that island?
That's going to be no, it's not really step by step. And the reason why is because it's so convoluted and it's the information is so circuitous that there's no good place to start. And the thing that I would say is probably the most important about understanding the island that you build is that the island's already built. You just need to get a copy of it from somebody. So whether that be KL or whether that be my mentor or whether it be David Straight or anybody else that claims that, that they've got this process figured out. And the thing that I would recommend that everybody does is really study that information. Read the court precedent that those documents reference, and read the U.S. code that are referenced. Read the UCCs that are referenced, and really try to understand it. And understand it from the point of comprehending the fraud that's in all of those, inherently in all of that situation that those documents are protecting you against. And that's the way in which you're able to gain enough comprehension in all of this to go in and actually defend it when a judge is trying to throw you in jail for something stupid.
Cody, I've got a couple of questions for you. This is Kathy.
Absolutely.
We've been trying to get a hold of you by phone, and I've been the holdup. So
Sorry, I'm a little elusive. I'm all over the place.
yeah, me too. So I followed David Straight's process, the AOR, Freedom Bundle, ROE, all of that. Do you think that accomplished anything?
I think that
Because
it definitely did in David's time. I think that in the last 5-6 years, the back and forth between officialdom and the people in the movement has really progressed quickly. And so I think that, there's theories that I'm working on that incorporate the UCC 3205. And I know that there's things that I've come up with in the past couple of years just by asking questions to my mentor. He goes, well, I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that for a little bit. Let me consult, let me get back to you. And then all of a sudden he sends me a new copy of the revocation of election or a new copy of the AOR and says, here, you better file this. And,
Right.
and so what I'm getting at is that, networking and talking about this is the best remedy. We need more people in the movement. I would highly discourage anyone from using David Straight's paperwork as they find it, because there is such better paperwork out there that is so much more concise and one thing I've learned is less is more in this arena. And so I've been dealing with helping a guy right now who's he ended up using David's process, got his name commercially trademarked inside the U.S. Patent Trade Office. But the problem is that's all in their arena. So even David didn't have the comprehension that, we have this entire other jurisdiction that we need to enter their courts from. And every single time you cite as a offensive a U.S. code, you're in breach of commingling the public and the private.
Right.
And so the code is for them to follow, not for us. It doesn't apply to us. And so if you say it does, you're talking about the ens legis automatically, whether you're saying I, we the people, the living man or woman, you're still talking about the ens legis. Or what's going to happen is the judge is just going to ignore it altogether if it's not your benefit, which is what sounds like happened to Ken for the most part. Because without that distinction between him, the living man, as the surety to the bonds that tie him to the ens legis and be responsible for the commercial claims against that entity in commerce, without rebutting those presumptions, he's there speaking for the ens legis, and the ens legis has no rights. It has privileges and immunities, and that's it. And it's a creation of the federal government, and that which one creates, one controls. And that's the reason why you get railroad. So David kind of had this idea that he was going to go into their courts and wrestle the judge down and do this bit, well, yeah, maybe under the right circumstances. But I mean, man, I don't really like to roll around on the ground with pigs because they seem to like the wrestling. I like to come up to the fence, shoot them in the back of the head from about 10 feet away and be done with it. Right? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So as far as that question, the best thing that I can say is that really try to gain perspective and look at the information and compare. Like, it takes a lot of time. But don't worry about your comprehension. It will come. It will come. Don't feel forced that, oh man, I just don't understand this. Okay, well, that's fine. Look at something that you can comprehend and understand that it's all this big circle. And until you go through it once or twice, or maybe even 3 times, the stuff up here that you get isn't really going to make any sense because there's a tie. Like through, for instance, in Title 8 of the UCCs, there's this star portal, they call it, that is how you get your private trust rights in their courts. It says right in there, not all, oh man. Anyway, there's a footnote in Title 8. I forget exactly what it says, and I don't want to misquote it because it's probably the first time you've heard it, and I don't want to put something wrong in there that gets messed up. So more homework. Go find that footnote in Title 8 of the UCCs about private trust law and private property law. And so I would say, I'll get in touch with my mentor and see if I could share the documentation that I've got from him with you guys. I know he generally charges for his stuff, and probably what he's going to do is say, yeah, get in touch with me. But I can tell you right now, before you approach him, it would be really advantageous if you all studied extensively and understood and performed the process in the redemption manual. Get that done, because that the information that's in that book, and when I went through it the first time, I ended up going through it and just kind of cherry picking the information that I thought I needed, and I did at the time because I was under attack. I had audits, and I was commercial business license insurance, and I mean, my bank accounts were getting frozen. It was ridiculous. They were arresting me for asking for oaths of office and throwing my ass in jail. It was ridiculous. And so I didn't really have the time to study it the way I should have. But take your time and read that thing from start to finish at least twice. It's going to take you a couple months, right? And I would say don't perform that process until at least your second time through it. And maybe, I mean, unless you're comfortable with it, but if you follow the instructions to the letter, you're going to end up just fine. But one thing I will say is that for the documentation associated with that, get in touch with me before you perform that process and take control of your ens legis on the commercial chamber and the UCCs with a UCC1 financing statement, because we've got updated paperwork that's more powerful, that is perfected now, that cannot be overturned. And that's in the power of attorney and the commercial security agreement and the indemnity bond and the hold harmless agreement. So basically all that paperwork in the redemption manual has been upgraded since then, because there's been weaknesses found and that have been utilized and attacked. And so we pivoted a little bit and made them better.
Okay, great. Does your mentor have a process for discharging credit card debt, or
Yes.
is it a direction that you recommend?
What I would recommend is to put an affidavit on the public record that calls out the fraud, of the fact that the credit card company is stealing your own credit and lending it back to you, and there is no conveyance of value. That's the fraud, right? There are multiple templates out there that identify exactly that, and that is universal in every single loan out there. And the basis of this authority to make this claim is in the Fair Lending Procedures Act, and then in Title 15, 1692G, I believe, section 1692G. And that is the validation of the debt. So using the Fair Credit Lending Practices and then also Title 15, you can hold that financial institution accountable to their fraud and ask them to produce the evidence that there was any valuable conveyance back to you. They did not use your signature as credit of the promissory note to create the value to lend back to you. And they can't. They will not be able to do that. So what you do then is you go back and you claim under the authority of that affidavit, you can either rescission the signatures and sue for damages in a tort claim, or what I would recommend doing is using the UCC3 and saying, due to non-disclosure of terms and conditions and the fact that there was no conveyance of value, however, the currency has already been spent. So my remedy, if one is not available for me, is to claim all of those promissory notes under UCC 3205 special endorsement retroactively, pay up, discharge the debt, and apply
Okay.
that value back to the balance, and we're done here.
Well, that's a lot easier than, I've seen the process of making your coupon into a check.
You know,
That-
and that is I don't like that process at all. And the reason why I don't like that process is because, are we subject to the IRS or are we not? Is it a private corporation or is it part of the federal government? We can't have it both ways, because if you're claiming tax exempt status, see, I almost kind of think that OID original issue, I almost think that that's kind of a psyop, because
Yeah,
at
I
least-
agree.
or at least maybe it's something that somebody just didn't quite think through all the way. And so the major problem that I have with that, and don't do the OID original issue, don't do the original issuance discount process, because the problem is that when it suits them, they'll say, well, sorry, the IRS is not yours. You have no authority over the IRS. It's not a part of the United States government. It's a Puerto Rican corporation, private corporation, and you are stealing value that you are not entitled to. And they're right. But what you do is you use their fraud and create a negotiable instrument, because it's an unconditional promise to pay. That's the definition of it. So what I would recommend doing if you want to try and do that is put an affidavit on the public record, get your long form birth certificate authenticated with both the state and where you were born and the Secretary of State at the federal level, right? And put that into a trust in the all caps name, and then accept for value through the trust the ens legis based on the commercial security agreement in the redemption manual, right? And then special endorse it, pay to the order of the all caps name under UCC 3205. Then you take that value and you hypothecate it and send a birth certificate bond to the United States Treasury, say, put it on deposit, use it for anything you want. And if anything is not okay in this, then tell me what it is, and I rescind my offer to contract. If anything is unlawful, bring it forward, and we'll either fix it or we'll rescind the offer, because we want to stand in honor and we don't want to do anything bad. 100% in the light. And when Scott Bessent doesn't get back to you, write into that contract, that bond that silences acquiescence, and they waive all future right to tort claims or damages or any prosecution whatsoever, without recourse, without prejudice. And then when they don't get back to you, open up a Treasury Direct account in the name of the trust, say, and send them a bill of exchange out of the trust, international bill of exchange. Say, fund it. Access the control of the currency at the Federal Reserve window. Fund this thing in currency. I issued you a bond in lawful US dollars that I can never pay you because you've abrogated the gold standard and you took all the money away from the ens legis with Executive Order 6102. So the Emergency Bank and Relief Act, is it valid legislation or is it not? Okay, well, fund the bill of exchange. I have this authenticated birth certificate right here that says full faith and credit of the United States. I am one of we the people. I'm the beneficiary to the United States. Fund it. You've got right here a contract that says without recourse, without prejudice. You had your opportunity to rebut. You had your opportunity to say no thanks. You had your opportunity to tell me what I got wrong as my public servant. You were silent. You agreed that this is over and done with. Pay up.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I agree
So-
with you about the OID. I'm not a taxpayer, so I don't want to use IRS forms.
Stay out of the IRS jurisdiction. They're a debt collection company. Just click. Do you have do we have a contract to perform or do we not? You know, it's like, well, bring it forward and I'll perform.
Right.
Other than
And
that,
I'm
cease and
separated
desist.
from
Leave
that.
me alone.
right. Right.
Yep.
Ken, I think Ken has more.
Okay.
I have a question.
Steve's going to talk to you.
Okay.
What's this fellow's name?
Cody.
Cody.
Yes,
Cody,
sir.
Can you see me?
I can.
All right, here we are.
Here's my story. My name is Dr. Joe DeRusso. About 10, 14 years ago, I was accused of 16 counts of illegal practice of medicine. I was run through a phony trial. I made 14 motions to dismiss for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. In the end, I was convicted, and then I appealed it to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. Texas Court of Criminal Appeals said, number one, the trial court never acquired subject matter jurisdiction in the light of my repeated motions to dismiss. And number two, there were no felonies. And they vacated the case and sent it back to the trial court. I have no idea how to collect for my damages. I spent 3.5 years behind bars, stone cold innocent. Everybody in the case knew I was innocent. They stole my airplane, they stole my property, and they put me in a prison down on the Mexican border, hoping that the heat would kill me. So now I'm just lost in space. I have no idea how to get damages, and I was severely damaged. They destroyed my life.
Did you have a medical license issued by the state at the time?
No, I was operating in a private membership association. I'm the chief science officer for the Society for the Study of Cellular and Molecular Biology. Everything we did was private. To the best of my knowledge and belief, it was within the law and by contract. And
were any of your customers in the PMA coming from across state lines for treatment?
I'm sure they were. I'm sure some were.
Was the value conveyed in Federal Reserve notes?
Yes.
Okay. The only recourse that you're going to have is, because it was vacated, is wrongful imprisonment, which is going to be 3.5 years at $75,000 a day in 1984. You can add about 3.5 times that for inflation. So 365 times 3.5, 1,200 times 75,000 times 4.
Okay.
You need to perform the redemption manual process. You need to get a hold of my mentor and get all of his documents, get them cured on the public record, including the schedule of fees, and put an affidavit on the public record that this is retroactive back to the date of your inception. You are going to file a criminal copyright violation against your private common law copyrighted material, which is your name. You're going to get a copy of all the court dockets. It's $250,000 per occurrence that they used it in the public without your permission. $75,000 a day times 3 for 3.5 years. And then the judge himself, the prosecutor, the individuals that arrested you are all going to get conspiracy to defraud, removal of due process, and 18,241,242. That's each. So that's going to be about $3 million per individual per occurrence. So that's 4. So that's another $12 million right there. And I would say that you're, I mean, once again, define what victory is, right? You want to get enough to get your stuff back and be able to live comfortably. 20-30 million ought to do it, because you're going to be in excess of $1 billion.
Are you interested in helping me with this?
Sure, I can help you out.
I'll give you $50 when everything's all settled and done.
No thanks. Your offer to contract is not accepted. I tell you what, I am the trustee of a Article 1, Section 10 trust, pure contract trust, and if you wanted to join the private member association and settle the terms in the silver through what's called the lawful money exchange, which I created, I'd be open to doing that on behalf of the trust as the trustee, because that is my charge. But
there is a lot of money in my claim.
What's that?
There's a lot of money in my claim. I just don't know how to get to it.
There's a lot of currency in your claim. There's no money in your claim.
All right, I'll agree with that.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your time. I'll be in touch.
Okay. Go ahead and get my information and send me a contact. We'll see what we can do.
Hey, Cody.
Yeah, it's going, Steve.
Face.
Yeah.
My question is, when the Chevron doctrine goes overturned, that means agencies are not allowed to create their own laws, correct?
So what it is that it used to be that the agency that was charged with the statutory authority to regulate interstate commerce. So let's say the EPA, for existence, and that's, we'll use that because that's where the Chevron deference came from, is overturning the Army Corps of Engineers and the EPA's ability to interpret the statute to their liking and implement rules out in the social order and out in the materiam according to their understanding of the statutes. The Chevron deference removed that authority for all federal agencies and bureaucracies to interpret their own statutes and put it back into the courts on an individual basis. So it still goes back to a matter must be expressed to be resolved. But like if you have something that is going on with a federal bureaucracy, EPA, ATF, FBI, you know, any of the three-letter agent, I mean, the CDC, the NIH, the HHS, you know, I mean, what is there, 450 of them or something like that? Any of those bureaucracies that are staffed with public servants that are paid from the United States government to perform a task to regulate interstate commerce are no longer given the latitude to interpret the bylaws and the statute and the code and the regulation that govern their actions internally. They're no longer allowed to interpret it internally. They're supposed to interpret it to the best of their ability, according to what the courts say is their responsibility, according to the definition of the statutes. And so the Chevron deference referenced some old Supreme Court case precedent prior to 1938, which is huge. And the reason why that's huge is because 1938 was the Erie Road, Pennsylvania, or the Erie, Pennsylvania Railroad versus Tompkins. And that's when we went from public law to public policy. So like if you go back to the congressional record in the National Archives and try to look up something, you actually have to FOIA and ask for a certified copy from the National Archives, any act of Congress that was put into place prior to 1938. The only thing you're going to find online is 1938 and afterwards because of that shift between public law and public policy. And so the fact that the Supreme Court brought that I think lessee of Waddell versus some anyway, but the Opine quote in the precedent that was referenced as part of the reason why that Chevron deference was overturned was this quote: "When the revolution started, the people themselves became sovereign," end quote. And so the fact that that was used in a Supreme Court case to reference an opinion to overturn the Chevron deference, that tells me that there has been a shift in the DOJ from the standpoint that we are but to express the matter in court in order to be able to return on a court of record on an individual status standpoint back to we the people are sovereign and the standing of sovereign and capacity inside of the private jurisdiction as it relates to the public.
Well, the reason I asked is I'm wondering how much the transportation code still was enforced. I guess that's a completely different arena.
Not really. I mean, kind of, but I think the major thing that is the difference there is that it's not, you know, it's not a distinction that's being given to the individuals that are operating out in commerce, right? It's the Chevron deference, in my opinion, takes the pendulum from one side and swings it all the way back to the other, right? Like more of a innocent until proven guilty type of a thing. Instead of the agencies being able to say, well, you did this and pay us this, and you have to go into court to defend and not pay all the fines and get your shit seized, right? It makes it the other way around. Whereas I think what you're talking about is the right to travel. You know, the right to travel exists in the private jurisdiction, and that never went away. It's just a matter that the cops and, you know, stadies, they just don't know. And they're because they aren't trained this way. And you have to understand that when you're trying to stand on your rights and use, you know, dynamic communication. If you're going to, like, this is one of the best ways, I think, where people can successfully educate our public servants, you know, policy enforcers, about how there really are still constitutional rights and they are violating due process in the Fourth Amendment every single time they pull somebody over. And, you know, at least without damage or a complaint or, you know, a claim. And the way to do that is to get a hold of the travel documents and get into the DMV code and learn. If you want to fight this, this is one of the best fronts, if you will, to fight this battle of awareness inside of the public servants. And the way to do it would be to get a hold of a book called Verbum Vincent, which is communication. Hold on, I'll show it to you.
Yeah, let me-
All communication is negotiation, and it's about dynamic communication. And
I have it so it's separate. No, I'm gonna put it in.
You have more questions coming up?
Well, I didn't get that.
Okay, Vincent. Was it by Francisco? Calvano. Okay. I got it. Yeah.
communication and negotiation. And the fact of the matter is that all communication is negotiation.
Cool.
There is no communication that isn't negotiation. And so it teaches, kind of your brain how to keep that in mind. And you use the self-image of these cops against them. I mean, and there's lots of good people who are cops, right? I'm not trying to drag all of them through the mud, right? It just so happens that I have to drag all of them through the mud because every single damn one of them has an oath to the Constitution and they violate it every single day and they don't even know they're doing it, right? And ignorance is no excuse for violation of the law. If we get told that, we're held to that standard all the time. So we get to hold them to it as well.
Back in November, I had a license plate. It just had my DOT number on it. A cop pulled me over, and I kept asking, what's the charges? What did I do or anything? He wouldn't say nothing until he pulled me out of the car, put me in handcuffs. As soon as he put me in handcuffs, he said, "We're not going to have any of the sovereign citizenship." That was his contention, and they took me to jail, towed my car away, and he intentionally left my phone on top of my car, which is I find very egregious. But I don't. He didn't have a case. Well, they wrote me up a ticket for no seatbelt and something else, no insurance or something. And that reminds me. Okay, I got a license plate now. It says private, no license, no insurance required. How do you get by with not having insurance? What is the alternative?
So when you operate the private in any capacity, whether you're walking down the sidewalk or whether you're walking into a courtroom or whether you're, entering into a contract or driving down the street or whatever you're doing, you operate knowingly and accepting 100% full liability of all the damage that you cause knowingly and unknowingly. That is the whole point of the private jurisdiction. And so, you don't have insurance, don't have insurance. Insurance is, I think that what I'm going to end up doing is I'm probably going to bond myself and put in this private membership association that I've got an account that's going to hold 21 ounces of silver. And they'll say, hey, anybody that is claiming damages agrees that as soon as they file against the ens legis, they're entitled to this 21 ounces of silver to settle the matter. That's it.
In
They
February,
get access to the account, it becomes theirs. And so, there's clauses that you can put into, okay, so Article 1, Section 10, no state shall make any law abridging the obligation of contract, right? So if you want to travel in the private and you get sued in the public, accept for value the charges and ask the judge to discharge the debt. Give it to him. Right. And that's what I was telling you about your deal the other day about but there was damage to a public asset. And so regardless of how that happened, if you were claiming private, then you personally would be liable for those damages. And
that's what I was going to bring up when I hit that. When not me, but when my automobile damaged a city vehicle, I had insurance. Okay, I took the insurance paper into the city hall, and it was confirmed that it was received, but they never filed a claim. And that seems to be very weird. I'm wondering if you think that maybe they're trying to say that there is an injured party by not having to.
I don't know.
That's
I'm
weird.
not sure. There could be all kinds of reasons. Bureaucracy being what it is, it's hard to say. It's probably just incompetence.
Yeah.
But the fact though that you submitted insurance was a tacit agreement that you were operating in commerce.
Oh,
Because an insurance company is a corporation, and an insurance company can't insure anything other than another corporation. Right.
oh,
So I have my vehicles in a trust, my automobile's in a trust, and that trust is a fiction of law, and that trust can get insurance, and it doesn't come back to me at all. Right.
do you have to have a title for your vehicle to put it in a trust?
Yeah, I did it through the state because I just wanted to keep my head down,
Yeah.
with all the yahoos running around, and I wouldn't put it past these people if you started gaining access to them to seek you out, T-bone you on purpose, and then because you're operating in. See, that's when you put that private plate on the back of your rig, you're a target, right? And like I said, this is a great way if you're prepared to fight this battle and get these people aware, because like that cop that. The problem with the US DOT number is depending on how you got it. See, I wouldn't do a US DOT number because if you're trapped with the US Department of Transportation, it's a corporation. That's commerce, man.
Sure.
Like that's another one of these things that I almost feel like is kind of a psyop, a lot like that OID process, because it puts you in that jurisdiction. If you ask for permission from a corporate entity of the federal government or tell them to allow you to do something, you're agreeing that you need to get their permission to do it. That's not how the private works.
Okay, about the title. That's why I asked you earlier, can you get a title without getting your car registered? Because you would need a title to put your car into a trust.
No, the manufacturer certificate of origin is what you need. And then all you would need to do is have that in your possession. You could write an affidavit if you can't get a bill of sale, put it on the public record and just paper-clip them together and have it in the glove box. And the affidavit would say something like, the dealership, the automobile dealership where this property is described as year, make, model, in my possession is described by the MCO, which has the identifying information, VIN number, make, model, year, all that kind of stuff. Whatever the identifying marks are on the MCO, and then declare it that this is the original manufacturer certificate for this automobile, and I have claim ownership of it. Anyone who rebuts this claim of 100% allodial title to the property described herein has 21 days to rebut, or silence his acquiescence, blah, blah, blah. And then after 21 days to the public record, it's done. It's yours. Then what you do is you take that car and you enter it into a commercial security agreement with your trust. And then you file that on your UCC3s and you have superior claim and title to it. See what I'm saying? So you have first in line and you lien it for about $1 million. And that way, any charge that they might be able to try and get you, the tow truck driver is going to go, no, I ain't touching this thing. It's already got a lien on it. Done. We'll never get paid.
Okay, the reason I bring this up, I'm buying a used car and I got one more payment before they sign the title over to me.
Okay.
And if I get the title transferred, I want to get it transferred without registering it. That's
can't do that. You can't do
I
that.
heard
And the reason why you can't do that is because the payments that you are using are devalued in Federal Reserve notes, and you're using their fraud financial system, which is okay. I mean, there's a utility to it at times, but you can't get a title from the state that you actually own. The only thing that you can do is I can send you paperwork that you can rescission the trusteeship of the state to actually own your vehicle, and you can tell them to shred it, but they're not going to listen. But then you have that documentation should there be an issue that you can submit in court and say, no, I rescission this. I got it out. I got it out of your guys' system. And I put it back in the private.
What I heard was that you can claim that you're shipping the vehicle over to certain countries. That's how you get the title without registering it. or you can ship it, you're getting it shipped out of state.
Why do you want a title for, why do you want the permission of the corporate state of state to tell you that you own your vehicle? Why wouldn't you stand on your own sovereign property rights in private jurisdiction and use the administrative process to tell the government to butt out? Free men don't ask permission. If you start getting into any processes where you try to finagle the state to, agree with you that it's yours, it's never really yours. You have to be using the administrative process and contract law, maxims of contract law, and using the public record to make claims that cannot be rebutted, and send it to the proper public servants to perform to the terms of your affidavit, or forever hold your peace. Silence is acquiescence.
So I can get the MCO or a notarial title without getting a title transfer?
You should go ahead and get the title transfer. See, okay, what I would do in your situation, if you want to protect yourself, and be able to drive around in today's environment, what I would recommend, if you don't want a bunch of interactions with police and you want to be left alone, is let's get you a trust, okay? And it could be, you already have one?
I have a trust, but the only copy I had was on an old hard drive that I can't access. Now, is there a database or something where I can get my trust is registered somewhere?
No.
Where I can get it?
You don't want it. If it's registered, you don't want it.
Well, on somewhere, I don't know if it's registered or whatever, but is there some kind of database where I can access the trust again?
You got me.
I don't know.
I mean, it would depend on where you put it. But anything that, okay, so you know how corporations can own property, right? LLCs they can own vehicles, right? Well, in Article 1, Section 10, a pure contract trust can do the same thing. And the cool thing about an Article 1, Section 10 contract trust is that it's created by the stroke of a pen. And it's created from the same authority and jurisdiction as the United States government was created. Okay, so these entities are on the same standing as the federal government judicially. And so what you do is you write into the indenture what the trust is for. And in this instance, it would be to protect the living man against the fomentation of fraud and tyranny and traveling and this, that, and the other. And just say that this is what it's for. And you could put a schedule of fees in there. So anytime that the living man is detained without, after a warning, without a lawful warrant for investigation into fraud of an emergency, is $2,000 a minute. So what you do is you put all that on the public record, right? Certificate of trust. And then you go to your DMV with an EIN that trust has gotten through the IRS, employee identification number. You open a checking account for it, or a savings account. And you take all that into the DMV, and you take the title that you have, you transfer it over to the trust. Trust now owns it, right?
Okay.
So then what you do is you go ahead and enter the trust into a commercial security agreement for the value of the car. You file that on the UCC3 from the living man, right? So now you, the living man, has the superior claim in commerce to the property the trust owns.
Okay.
And what that does is anytime a cop tries to impound the car, they can't, because there's already a superior claim in commerce for far more than they can put against that thing in order to be able to have a justifiable reason to actually take possession of the collateral. It's already collateralized. They can't take it. And if they do, you charge them with theft. And so what you do then is you go to the DMV and you get a registration. So you put tags and license plates on the thing for the trust, because who cares if the trust is agreeing to the DMV, right? Who cares? Then you blend in with the rest of the slaves and the sheeple and you don't get messed with. If you want to fight and get arrested and have them impound your shit and bang it up and charge you and get threatened with criminal contempt and be in jail and have to fight and be willing to go to put a lien on the Capitol building and take it as far as you need to and maybe end up in a standoff with the federal government over sovereign capacity, yeah, go put your private plates on there and be willing to go that far. I am, right? But if you want to be left alone, what's your definition of victory? Do it this other way and just remove the ability for them, put a firewall in place and build your island and remove the ability for them to get at you. And with that plate on there, you blend in with the rest of the sheep and you'll never be messed with again.
So let the trust register it, and then you're still not. Okay, cool.
And then according to the trust indenture, the trustee, and you accept the office of trusteeship for that trust, gets to use the trust property to engage in the trust business on a daily basis. And then
good.
you can get insurance for it. Then, then anything can happen. And then if something really bad happens, you just go, here you go, have it, throw them the keys and put a clause in there that anything, any major lawsuit or anything that happens, you just sign it over. Like if it's if it's your property now, it's yours. Here you go. I'm out. Walk away.
Okay, cool. So
Go with a copy of the insurance policy. Here you go.
So
Start over.
The trust buys the insurance company.
Trust buys the insurance, right?
And you stay free. That sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, one more thing I heard: if they impound your car and you show up fuel bill, charge the rent for your car, they'll just give it to you. Heard anything about like that?
That might work, but why wouldn't you just go ahead and have a superior claim in commerce against so they can't take it to begin with?
Okay, I'm just saying, if I've had my car.
I think that would be pretty hard because what you're doing is you're not first in line, first in time then.
Okay.
If you had some way to prove that you were first in line, first in time through that UCC3 filing of collateral, that would identify the vehicle as collateral to the commercial security agreement, then what would happen is that the only entity that they can charge against Legis already owes the trust for the car. They already owe.
Okay. You mentioned Legis. You texted me that line I was supposed to quote before the judge when they called roll call, but my attorney came in and reset my case before they had roll call, so I wasn't able to state that line.
Okay, well, if your attorney is then there, if your attorney is speaking for you, then anything you say is irrelevant.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what you say.
So I can, if it's a court-appointed attorney, can I switch him from representation to just counsel? That's what
You
I
can
heard.
try, but it might be too late.
So I should just fire him outright.
Well, I mean, what's your definition of victory? This is the thing where you ended up smacking the other vehicle and they just want a reckless driving.
Well, according to the body cam, it's obvious I just swerved to avoid an accident, and incidentally, there was a car on his shoulder, and he said he can get the prosecutor to just drop it because it's obvious I was just avoiding an accident.
Then do that.
I saw the body cam footage, and the cars were just moving right along on the freeway, and all of a sudden the car stopped, and the car behind them stopped, and I swerved to avoid that car.
Yeah.
So that's
When you're the defendant and the lawyer comes in and is getting you remedy and getting you then it looks agreeable and he's saying, yeah, we can get you this, we can get you that. And the worst that can happen is a couple $1,000 fine for something like, totaling a car. Take it. I mean, why would you fight a settlement that is that inconsequential for considering what it could be? Because if you go in there and start talking, agents and ens legis and I'm, this, that, and the other, and you don't, first of all, you don't have the paperwork to back that up, then they're going to come. That's what these people do is they come at you with offense, right? When they know that they've screwed up and they know that you know your rights and you're willing to defend them, they just come down on you harder.
Right.
They only have offense.
You're looking for your breaking point.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're looking for your breaking point. And so, if your attorney's coming in and already is looking like he's getting a remedy for you and is getting things done, and he's like, yeah, the prosecutor will do this and that. We can get you off on a reckless driving, 2 points on your license and a $2,000 fine, and you're out of here. Do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll probably settle out on that on a county level, but on the city level, they're trying to charge me with driving on a shoulder and failing to yield to a police car. even
You
though
you can't be charged for the same crime twice.
no, I'm charged in municipal court and county court. County court, they're charging me with reckless driving. In municipal court, they're charging me with driving on the shoulder and failing to yield to a cop car. Even though
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's one incident. I don't think they can do that.
well, that's what I got going. Two different courts, county and municipal, city
Okay.
and county.
That
Anyway,
sounds fishy to me.
yeah, just the whole thing. My attorney says that they just don't like me. That's why when I first met him, he agreed with me as malicious prosecution, from the license plate thing. But that's what it
Okay.
is. They're just
Well, if you wanted to come back after him on offense and get it all to be dropped, I can get you in touch with my mentor, and he might be able to help you out. But I mean,
I like to sue him for false arrest because it was
well,
ridiculous
then you
that they
can't plead guilty. You can't accept a settlement.
okay.
But if
Yeah,
you don't have your paperwork done, you've got no standing.
Okay. And paperwork entitles quite a few things, I imagine.
AOR, affidavit of repudiation, Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. You got to get that redemption done. It's extensive.
Yeah, I did the
Indemnity
AOR.
clause. What's that?
I did the AOR a couple years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. There's more to it. All right, now. I appreciate it. I'll see if anybody else has any other questions.
All right, Steve. Sounds good.
All right, keep in touch.
Good talking with you.
Jason.
Well, I really appreciate your advice. We've got a lot to
Absolutely.
research.
Yeah, it's extensive.
I think that's all the questions for the group.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
You got it, man. Anytime.
Thanks, Scotty.
Okay. Yep. So, you're good.